Graham Field sat motionless in his car, parked just a block away from one of his steakhouses. Through the windshield, the restaurant's glowing sign flickered faintly in the dusky evening, like it was whispering a truth he wasn't ready to hear. This wasn't just any location. It was one of 15 he had rebuilt from the ground up, turning a dying brand into a thriving restaurant chain over the last 7 years. It had been a risky move, even reckless, but it had become a testament to his grit and instinct. He hadn't just saved a name, he breathed life back into something most people had written off. But lately, something inside him had shifted. It was subtle at first, like a hairline crack in a windshield, barely visible but quietly spreading. 3 locations had seen a steady drop in reviews. This one, nestled in a busy suburban shopping center, was the worst of them all. Complaints were growing, plates being sent back, wait times stretching too long, staff quitting with little to no notice. Graham had heard enough recycled excuses from his district managers, sterile reports dressed up in corporate optimism, designed to soothe investors but blind to real people. What he needed wasn't a polished summary. He needed the truth, raw, undiluted, ugly, if that's what it took. So Graham did what no one expected him to do. He disguised himself. He cut his hair short, let the sides gray. He grew out a scruffy beard and wore thick-rimmed glasses. Threw on a second-hand uniform shirt from a long-forgotten chain, plain black slacks, and a pair of beat-up non-slip shoes that had seen better days. In the mirror, he didn't see a CEO. He saw a tired, middle-aged man clinging to his first job. At 3 p.m., Graham slipped through the back entrance, right before dinner prep. Just the right moment to see the kitchen without the mask of evening rhythm. His cover was airtight, a transfer from another location that had closed down. Most of the staff had never met him in person, and those who might have seen his face in a company newsletter wouldn't connect it to the weary figure now standing in front of them. "Name?" the manager asked, eyes still locked on a clipboard. "Gabe," Graham answered, sticking to the alias he'd rehearsed over and over. "We're short anyway. Grab an apron. You're shadowing Dee tonight." Turned out to be a sharp, fast-moving server in her 30s, all muscle memory and clipped instructions. She tossed him a notepad the moment she saw him. "Keep up or get trampled." Graham followed her into the storm. The restaurant looked clean, polished even, but the tension in the air told a different story. The front-of-house team moved like soldiers under fire, tired, mechanical, bracing for the next hit. Orders crawled out of the kitchen, often incomplete or overdone. Dee kept the chaos from boiling over. Barely. She apologized to guests, hustled plates, called out to the kitchen, ran interference like a battlefield medic. Graham could feel it in his gut. This place had once had a soul. Now it was fading. "Is place always like this?" he asked while filling water at a nearby table. "Short, 2 servers and a busser," Dee replied without turning. "One quit last week, the other just ghosted. Kitchen's worse, nobody sticks around long." "What about the chef?" She glanced sideways. "You'll see." 40 minutes later, Graham did. A customer had sent back a steak. Cold. In the middle. Graham, still just Gabe, brought it to the pass window. "Need this redone?" he said calmly, placing the plate down. "Rick." The head chef stepped forward. He was tall, bald, with an apron stained in grease and a permanent scowl. He slammed a spatula onto the stainless steel counter. "Cold, what, the guy eating it doesn't have teeth or something?" Graham didn't flinch. Rick narrowed his eyes. "Who are you?" "Gabe." "Well, Gabe, tell your whiny customer to suck it up next time. I'm not their damn mother." Before Graham could respond, a quiet voice piped up from the side. "I'll remake it, chef." The voice belonged to a kid, no older than 20. Thin frame, dark curls, nervous hands. He looked like someone still learning to trust his place in the world. His name tag read, Theo. Rick spun on him. You think I need you to jump in? Your job is to chop onions and shut the hell up. Go clean the fryer. Theo froze. His shoulders sagged, and he picked up the plate as if it were some personal burden he had to carry alone. As he walked away, Graham watched. Not just the movement, but the weight behind it. No one else saw it, but Graham did. In that bowed head, in the way Theo's back curled inwards, he saw something more than just a bad moment. He saw a young man slowly losing faith in his job, in this kitchen, and worst of all, in who he might have become if someone had just believed in him. No one said a word as Theo quietly carried the plate away, like silence was just part of the routine. Dee grabbed another hot plate and nudged it toward Graham with practiced ease. Take this to table 7, she said briskly, then turned away, swept up again by the whirlwind of guests waving her down. A little later, when the dinner rush began to ebb, Graham slipped quietly back into the kitchen. In the far corner, Theo was scrubbing a fryer. The rubber gloves swallowed his thin hands, making him look like a kid playing dress-up rather than an actual employee. Graham approached gently. You all right? Theo flinched, startled. His eyes flicked up, wary. Sorry, I didn't mean to get in Rick's way. In the moment, does that happen often? Graham asked, his voice neutral, not accusing. Theo hesitated, then gave a small nod. Only when he's stressed, which is basically always. Graham nodded slowly. He'd seen many kinds of leadership. But this? Someone who poisons the entire room just by walking into it, was the kind he could never accept. You ever think about quitting? Theo offered a small smile, but there was no light in it. Every day, but I can't. My mom's sick. Bills. Don't care what Rick says. Graham looked at him. Really looked. Beneath the dark circles and quiet demeanor was a stubborn kind of strength. A strength that came from people no one ever noticed. Theo still cared. But he was being slowly crushed by someone who clearly didn't. That night, Graham sat in his car again, watching through the windshield. Employees trickled out of the back door, one by one, dragging tired bodies and heavy steps. Theo was the last to leave, his backpack slumped over one shoulder, head down. Graham knew he couldn't walk away. Not yet. Not until he found out if this had been just a bad night or a warning sign of something worse. The next day, he returned, still in the disguise of Gabe, the transferred server. The air inside felt much like the night before, maybe even heavier. Staff entered the building like soldiers reporting to duty, shoulders tight, faces drawn. Guy glanced at him, then tossed him an apron. You survived last night? She smirked. Let's see if you last the week. Graham tied on the apron, his eyes drifting toward the kitchen. Rick hadn't arrived yet, but the energy in the room had already dipped. Carla, the prep cook, was slicing potatoes on autopilot. Theo stood at the sink, his body folded in like he wanted to disappear. Every move they made carried a kind of caution, not routine. The dinner crowd came faster than the night before. Graham shared a section with Dee and they both moved non-stop just to keep pace. A couple at table 6 waved him over. We've been waiting almost 20 minutes for drinks, the man said, calm but clearly running out of patience. I'll check right away, Graham said, hurrying to the bar. Behind the counter, a young bartender named Landon leaned lazily on his elbows, phone in hand. Graham stepped up. Drinks for table 6 still not ready? Landon didn't look up. You'll get 'em when I get to 'em. They've been waiting a while. Graham's tone stayed even. Not my fault you guys don't know how to time your orders. Landon finally glanced up, his eyes dull, his tone detached. "Chill, man, it's not that deep." Graham said nothing. He glanced at the name tag, Landon, then calmly pulled drinks from the soda machine and delivered them himself. By 7:00 p.m. Rick showed up, 30 minutes late and unapologetic. He muttered something about traffic and immediately started barking orders, not even bothering to wash his hands. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Colder, heavier, like a storm cloud settling in. Ram stood near the expo window, watching. Rick moved quickly, but it was the reckless kind of fast. Steaks pulled too early, sides sloppily plated, no heat lamps on, no care, just speed. Theo was trying to garnish a plate when Rick shoved in beside him, knocking his elbow. "Out of the way, you're not plating tonight." Theo didn't answer. He just stepped back, quietly rubbing his arm. Graham saw it all, the way Theo seemed to fold in on himself, as if trying to disappear. A few minutes later, as Theo passed by carrying a bread tray, Graham leaned in. "You okay?" Theo nodded once, but didn't meet his eyes. "I'm fine." But he wasn't. Graham knew. At the end of the shift, Theo was wiping down the prep station when Rick walked by and paused, pointing his chin toward a corner of the table. "You missed a spot." Theo turned to look. There was nothing there. "I don't see anything." "Exactly," Rick sneered. "You never see anything." Graham stepped forward, pulling a towel from his waistband. "Got it," he said evenly. Rick raised a brow. "You his babysitter now?" "No," Graham said without looking up, "just lending a hand." Rick muttered something and walked off. Graham didn't care what it was. Later, in the walk-in cooler, Graham found Theo crouched near the dairy crates, organizing cartons of cream. His hands were still shaking. "You always close like this?" Graham asked. Theo gave a slight shrug. "Doesn't let me leave before he does. Even when you're done." "Yeah?" His voice was soft, like it wasn't even worth questioning. "You work hard," Graham said. "I try." "Doesn't matter though, everyone quits eventually." Question: "Why haven't you?" "My mom needs the insurance." No bitterness in his voice, just quiet resignation. Graham clenched his jaw, heat rising in his chest. When he walked out to the front, Dee was counting her tips at the bar. "You saw it, didn't you?" she said without looking up. "I did. We all see it, but no one does anything." "Why do you still work here?" "I've got a kid," Dee replied. "This schedule works for me, and I don't let Rick make me miserable." Graham leaned back against the wall, his voice dropping low. "Has anyone ever reported him?" Dee gave a dry laugh. "To who?" "The district manager stops by once a quarter. Rick plays the angel for 2 hours, then it's back to usual the second they leave." Graham didn't respond, but in that moment, a decision had already taken root. The next day, he arrived early. He wanted to see everything, from prep to close. At exactly 4:30, Rick walked in, barking orders before anyone could even greet him. "Were we out of mushrooms again? Who ordered last?" Carla, the prep cook, raised her hand. "I did. It's on the list." Rick snatched the clipboard from the wall. "Are you blind or just stupid? This list's a joke." Carla said nothing. She simply turned back to her cutting board and kept slicing, as if the shouting hadn't even happened. Graham stepped out of the kitchen and headed to the office. Eric, the assistant manager, was hunched over the computer. "Hey," Graham said, closing the door. "Got a minute?" Eric looked up, startled. "Oh yeah, sure, what's going on?" "Let me ask you something. You've seen how Rick treats people, right?" Eric leaned back slowly, hesitant. "Yeah." "Then why hasn't anyone stepped in?" Eric scratched his head, clearly uncomfortable. "Rick's been here 6 years. Got us through the pandemic. Corporate loves him. His numbers are always solid. Food costs low, productivity high. They say he's tough, but they say he gets results. And right then, Graham saw it. The problem wasn't just Rick. It was a system that cared more about metrics than the people behind them. Graham kept his face neutral, though his gut churned. Even if it meant burning through good employees, people were willing to tolerate someone like Rick because the numbers looked good. Eric didn't argue. He didn't defend. Because he knew Graham was right. Back on the floor, Graham spotted Theo struggling with a stack of plates that was clearly too tall. As he rounded a corner, one slipped and shattered across the tile. The sharp crack pierced the already tense air like a shot. Rick stormed out of the kitchen like a predator. "You kidding me? What are you, 5?" he barked, pointing at the shards. "That's coming out of your chest." Theo bent down quickly, face pale, panic rising. "It was an accident. Rick kicked a piece aside with his boot. "Save it. You're a liability." Graham dropped his tray and stepped forward. "That's enough." Rick turned, eyes wild. "You talking to me?" Graham calmly removed his glasses. "Yes, I am." Rick froze. "Who the hell are you?" Graham pulled off the wig. "I'm Graham Fields. I own this place." The room fell silent. He stood frozen. Eric rushed in from the office, face pale. Rick stammered. "This some kind of joke?" "No," Graham said, steady and clear. "It's not." He turned to Thea. "You're right." Theo nodded slowly, too stunned to speak. Graham looked back at Rick, locking eyes. "I've watched you insult, belittle, and threaten this staff for 2 straight days. You're done here. Turn in your keys." Rick opened his mouth, but no words came out. His eyes scanned the room for backup, but all he met were cold stares and silence. No one stood with him. Rick yanked off his apron and walked out without another word. Graham exhaled, then turned back to the staff. "We've got a lot to fix, and it starts tonight." No one said anything, but Dee stepped forward and nodded once. "I'll stay to help close." Graham turned to Theo. "You're not paying for those plates." The kid stared at him, unsure if he'd heard correctly. "No one should come to work feeling afraid," Graham said, his voice firm. "Starting tomorrow, we build this place back, the right way." The next morning, Graham arrived at the restaurant before opening. No disguise, no alias, just himself. He walked in through the front door, the one for guests. The young host, surprised, paused as he approached. "You're the owner?" Graham nodded. "I'm here to help today. Just point me to whoever's setting up." She blinked, then pointed toward the soda station. "He's here early. She's getting everything together." Graham spotted her adjusting the napkin bins. She glanced up as he approached. "Didn't think you'd be back so soon." "I'm not going anywhere," Graham said. "Not until this place runs the way it should." Dee nodded. "That's a tall order." "I've got time," he replied. She didn't argue. Instead, she handed him a stack of menus. "You want to help? These need wiping, still greasy from last night." They worked side by side in quiet rhythm. A few minutes later, Carla stepped out of the kitchen, apron already dusted in flour. She slowed when she saw Graham. "Morning," he said. "You doing okay?" Carla gave a small nod. "I heard what happened last night." "Things are changing," Graham said. "Starting today." She held his gaze a moment longer, then turned back toward the kitchen without a word. But her footsteps were lighter. By 11:00 a.m., most of the staff had arrived. The new head chef, an even-tempered, quietly confident man named Jorge, was set to start the following week. In the meantime, Graham had arranged for a culinary trainer from headquarters to step in. Her name was Lena. Lena arrived just after prep began, carrying a sleek knife roll and greeting Graham with a firm handshake. "I've reviewed the situation. I'll keep the kitchen moving and make sure no one's drowning. You'll have a clean handoff." "I believe you," Graham replied. She didn't need to raise her voice. A few clear, calm directives, and the entire kitchen began to function like a well-oiled machine. Carla responded instantly. Even Theo, who'd barely spoken the day before, looked more grounded, with Lena by his side. Graham stepped back and observed. He wasn't here to micromanage. He was here to learn, to understand what it would take to heal what he had allowed to fracture. A little while later, he saw Eric adjusting the shift schedule on the bulletin board. "Got a second?" Graham asked. Eric nodded, trying to patch the schedule. "We're down 2 servers and a dishwasher. Were you going to be able to cover for now?" "I'll do what I can, but you should know, it's been rough lately." "How bad?" Eric lowered his voice. "In the last 3 months, 6 people quit. 3 didn't show. 1 walked out mid-shift." Graham let out a slow breath. "Why didn't that get escalated?" "I sent the reports up the chain, but I don't think they ever made it to your desk." "Who was filtering them?" Eric hesitated. "District manager." He'd always say, "Don't worry, I've got it under control. No need to get Graham worked up." Graham clenched his jaw but kept his tone even. "From now on, you report directly to me." Eric nodded. "I'm glad you're here." Staff were starting to feel like no one cared anymore. "I didn't know," Graham said quietly, "because I didn't dig deep enough. But that changes now." The first half of the day went smoother than he expected. Thanks to Lena, the kitchen was running steadily. The front-of-house staff seemed more at ease. No one was laughing, yet, but they weren't walking on eggshells anymore either. By 3:00 p.m., Graham pulled Theo aside. "You taken a break yet?" Theo shook his head. "Didn't want to fall behind." "You've been going since noon. Take 15. Theo hesitated. "You sure?" "I'm sure." The kid nodded and disappeared into the back hallway. Graham turned back and saw a pile of dirty trays building up. He rolled up his sleeves and stepped in. Water hissed, the dishwasher clanked. For a few minutes it was just motion and sound. Behind him, Dee stood watching with her arms crossed. "You don't look like someone who scrubs dishes for a living." "Not exactly my specialty," Graham admitted. She grabbed a towel and started drying trays. "People are talking. They don't know what to make of this." "Owned me doing this." "Yeah." "They're not used to being noticed unless something's going wrong." Graham passed her another tray. "That's on me. I let the wrong people speak for me." "You're here now," Dee said. "Let's see what you do with it." By 6:00 p.m., the dinner rush had begun. Graham took a few tables himself, watching how the system held up under pressure. It wasn't perfect. Orders still lagged at times, and the host stand got a little backed up. But there was no yelling, no slammed plates, and no one left crying. At 8:00, a couple asked to speak with the manager. Graham walked over. "Is there something I can help with?" The woman smiled. "No complaint. Our server mentioned there's new management. We've been here before, and tonight feels different, in a good way." Graham thanked her and headed back to the server station where Dee was collecting check slips. "Table 12, he said. "Regulars. Said they've seen this place at its worst. Then we make sure they never see that again." At closing, Graham gathered the team in the dining area. Chairs were still unstacked. The room carried the weight of the day, but also a strange, quiet sense of anticipation. "I know the past few months have been hard," Graham began. "You haven't been heard. You've been overworked, disrespected. That ends today." No one interrupted. He continued. "I don't expect instant trust, but I'm going to earn it, starting now. If you've ever been overlooked, dismissed, or mistreated, I want to hear from you." He paused. "I'll be meeting with every single one of you before the end of the week." A few heads lifted. There will be changes, some big, some small, but every one of them will come from listening. In the back, Theo looked up. Carla gave a small nod. And if you ever see anyone treated the way Theo was, don't stay quiet, come to me. Directly, he swept the room with his gaze. This place is only as strong as the people who run it, and that means all of you. No one clapped, but no one looked away. As the staff dispersed, Graham bent down to stack chairs. Dee wiped down tables nearby. "You meant what you said?" she asked. "Every word." "Then you've got a shot." Graham nodded, turning back to the chairs. Tomorrow would be the real beginning. Interviews, hiring, rebuilding trust. But for now, the place was no longer holding its breath. It was exhaling. Slowly, but finally. For the first time in months, the restaurant felt like it was breathing again. It wasn't perfect, but at last it was moving toward the light. Same familiar sign, same cracked parking lot, same beige leather booths, worn and faded with time. But inside, something had changed. Not the temperature, not the air conditioning, the atmosphere. That intangible something anyone could feel the moment they stepped through the door. Graham started each morning before the first prep knife hit the cutting board. No suit, no clipboard, just a polo shirt, jeans, and a notepad. Not filled with metrics or KPIs, but with names, stories, and weight people carried into work each day. He wasn't there to interrogate. He was there to listen. By midweek, one-on-one conversations were underway, held in the small office behind the kitchen, the door always left cracked open so no one felt summoned. Graham sat across from each person, eye level, pen in hand. No raised voices, no pressure. Theo came in early for his slot. He sat stiffly, unsure of what to do with his hands. Graham didn't look up from his notebook. "You don't need to impress me. I already know who's been holding this place together." Theo gave a slight nod. "Tell me something you haven't told anyone else here." Theo hesitated. 2 months ago, I almost quit. Had my backpack on. Made it all the way to the bus stop. But I couldn't go back to delivering groceries. I've learned how to cook now. What made you stay? Tonight, Carla was on the line. She was drowning. I couldn't leave her alone. Graham jotted it down, then looked up. Ever been offered a promotion? Theo shook his head. I don't have a certification. You want one? Theo blinked. Yeah, I do. I'll cover the training, and we'll build a development path. You don't have to stay in prep unless that's what you want. Theo looked down at his hands. I didn't think anyone noticed. I did. The next day, Graham sat down with Carla, arms crossed, eyes sharp. You're not going to ask me to sugarcoat anything, are you? Then I'll be straight. You've got 3 solid cooks. One will leave the moment someone offers $1 more, and no one has the authority to correct mistakes with Rick breathing down their neck. What do you need? Someone who can keep the kitchen moving, doesn't need to yell, just knows how to hold the line. Jorge starts next week, but until then, I want you running the kitchen. Her eyebrows lifted. Luke, you've already been doing it. Now you'll have the title and the raise. She paused, then stood. And then I'll need a new fryer basket. Ours is warped. Gone. That afternoon, Landon didn't show up for his bar shift. No call, no message, nothing. Graham didn't ask anyone to fill in. He put on gloves, stepped behind the bar, and did the job himself. At the end of the shift, he wrote it up. Job abandonment. Termination. No negotiation. The next morning, Graham met with Dee. She didn't sit until he gestured to the chair. Heard I've got a reputation, she said. Calmed, worth learning from. Graham replied, You've held this place together while I didn't. I'm not looking for a title. I'm not offering one. Not yet. I'm offering authority. Jane tilted her head. What does that mean? We'll train new hires, sign off before they go on the floor. You get final say on shift changes, and if anyone pushes back, they won't, because I'll back you. She studied him, like she was testing the truth in his words. You serious? I can't fix this place from behind a desk. I need people like you. She didn't answer right away, then stood. Then I need a better headset. The current one crackles when it rains. I'll order two. That same day, a young woman named Marisol came in to apply for a server position. 3 years of experience. Recently laid off when her old bistro was bought out. Eric interviewed her. Dee handled the floor test. She passed both. But Graham wanted to meet her too. They sat in a booth between lunch and dinner rush. I don't care if you've memorized every wine pairing in the world, Graham said. What I care about is how you treat the dishwasher when the kitchen's running behind. Don't raise my voice. If something's wrong, I ask why. Graham nodded. You'll start with 3 shifts, then we'll talk. She started the next day. Within 10 minutes, she was resetting tables without being asked. By the end of the week, she was helping Theo clean the prep station after close. No one told her to. She just did the right thing. On Sunday, Jorge arrived, no speech, just a notebook, a clean apron, and a calm presence that warmed the kitchen. Within the hour, he was calling orders with clarity, offering sharp but respectful feedback, asking Carla what systems were worth keeping. By the end of his first shift, he had every name memorized and 2 new prep schedules on the wall. Carla leaned over and whispered to Graham. He's the real deal. Graham said nothing. He didn't need to. That night, after the last customer left, Graham stayed behind. The lights were dim, chairs stacked. Staff had gone home tired, but not drained. Eric stepped out of the office with a folder in hand. Payroll's done, inventory tallied. Graham leaned back in the booth. How's it feel? For the first time, like I'm not waiting for something to break. Keep saying what you see, Graham told him. Not what you think I want to hear. He will. Graham let Eric lock up and walked out through the front door. A week later he returned, this time as a customer. No apron, no disguise. He waited for a table like everyone else. Theo, now in a line cook's jacket, was plating dishes with precision. Carla was checking temperatures. Jorge gave him a nod from across the kitchen. He walked over with a menu in hand. Welcome back. This time, her smile was real. Any specials tonight? Let me recommend something. She jotted down a note, then leaned in slightly. We're fully staffed. 3 new hires passed their tests. 10 days, no one's quit. That's a record. It's a start. Graham leaned back, taking it all in. The restaurant wasn't perfect. It never would be. But it was fair, it was functional, it was human. And after too long, it finally felt like his again. Not because his name was on the lease, but because the people inside were proud to wear the apron. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Moments of Quiet Truth, where we believe that the human spirit is never truly defeated, only waiting to rise.